Yo, 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 what it do, what it do? Afternoon. Good afternoon, y'all. It's 2 p.m. on a Tuesday afternoon. It's Tuesday, September 12th. It's a lot of stuff that's going on. Obviously, if you watched the game from last night, you know the big news is Aaron Rodgers. But there's a bunch of other stuff we got to cover today, and so we'll jump right into it. Hope everybody had an awesome week one. My week one was a little hectic in terms of just my teams. I didn't perform as well as I would have liked to in a lot of my leagues, mainly on the back of 0 points from the likes of T. Higgins and or Drake London. That said, we're looking forward. You don't win your league in 1 week. And that's why we're here today. That's what we're going to be talking about as well later on after the news is who to target on waiver wires, who to pick up to essentially ensure that maybe you don't lose the next couple weeks in a row. Maybe you got off to a really not so hot start like myself, but this is where you change your outcome. This is where you make the moves that will determine whether you end up an 0 for season, 0-12 or 0-13 or whatever it may be, or whether you actually, put up some points and make it competitive. So, and potentially make it into the season, into the postseason. So, I've seen it all. I've seen somebody go 1-6 to start the season and then win out because they didn't give up and make it into the playoff championships, or the playoffs and then later on the championship. So, it's not impossible. Don't let 1 week discourage you. I know I won't. So let's jump into the news. Diontae Johnson expected to be out, quote unquote, a few weeks. So this was 5 hours ago. Pittsburgh Steelers wide receiver Diontae Johnson, hamstring, is expected to be sidelined a few weeks with the right hamstring injury that he suffered in the Week 1 loss to San Francisco 49ers, according to a source. If the Steelers put Johnson on injury reserve, he'd be forced to miss at least the next 4 games. 27-year-old needs to be stashed in all fantasy leagues, so he'll be one of the team's top receiving targets when healthy. We'll look at the stats in a sec. The biggest beneficiary will likely be George Pickens, but Allen Robinson II and tight end Pat Freiermuth should also benefit from more targets coming their way, starting next Monday night in a matchup against Cleveland Browns. Okay, so thanks Keith Hernandez and Adam Schefter. So we saw Diontae go down. If you were watching that game, it was a shit show, but this made it a little worse. If just you're a Diontae Johnson, owner, or rather a Steelers fan in general, this news sucks. He's a focal point of that team. Clearly, he's somebody who gets targeted a whole bunch. Like I said, we'll look at his actual... Why don't we look at the box score real quick while we're here? Where is it? Right here. Okay, so as far as targets are concerned, Diontae Johnson had 6 targets. Okay, second on the team. Allen Robinson had 8 targets, which is crazy when you think about it. George Pickens had 7, which was second most on the team. Diontae Johnson and Calvin Austin III combined, both saw 6, which is tied for the third most on the team. And surprisingly, Allen Robinson had the most targets. He didn't really do a lot. Not many of them did a whole bunch. Allen Robinson actually led the team in not only targets, but yardage. So that's kind of something to take away here. But now that Diontae Johnson's going to be absent for the next at least 2 to 3 weeks minimum, yeah, sure, you might see George Pickens, his targets might go up. You might just see Allen Robinson's targets go up. I'm not sure what's going on here with Allen Robinson and Kenny Pickett. Clearly, this game was tough. San Francisco D played the hell out of this game. And, you can see it right here in the numbers. Kenny Pickett's average yardage per attempt was 5. He threw 46 times, and he actually completed a large amount of them, 31 completions, but they didn't go for many yards. And you had a couple players, there's one 26-yard catch by Diontae Johnson, another 31-yard catch by Allen Robinson. But I'm sure a lot of that was run after catch. And at the same time, you just chalk it up to 49ers D being what they are. I don't know. Okay, go get Allen Robinson if he's not owned in your league. I guess that's somebody who I don't trust, but you can if you want. He should be owned. I think he should be on rosters, at least until Diontae Johnson comes back, just for the sake of this volume that he has. I don't know. This is crazy. This is crazy, man. I don't know why they're targeting him 8 times in a game, but, I guess he looked solid. I mean, he definitely played, apart from Diontae, he played the best game out of all their receivers. George Pickens caught 5 of his passes, but he only had 36 yards. And, that you want to see more from him. You want to see more from the Kenny Pickett combo. Pat Freiermuth did get that touchdown, which was nice to see, but he basically sacrificed his body in the process. He actually got laid out like a couple plays before, maybe just the literal play right before that, and then ended up catching that touchdown and then left the game and didn't come back. Well, I'm not trying to laugh because it's funny. It just sucks that he left so fast. But he did essentially sacrifice his body for that one touchdown. And if you're a Pat Fryermuth owner like myself, that was at least fortunate, right? That he was able to salvage his day before going out like that with just that one touchdown. So sometimes that's all it takes, just that one touchdown. But still, my point is, hopefully we'll see Pat Fryermuth come back. I don't think that injury was serious. It knocked him out of the game. I don't believe. Well, we'll keep an eye on his practice and in the injury report coming out of Pittsburgh. But man, it just sucks that he was knocked out of the game in the way that he was. But and man, I don't even know who it was I think it was like one of the safeties for the 49ers who laid that hit, but like he was like stoked about it. It's like, dude, come on, we're not trying to hurt anybody here. Similarly in like the Panthers game, there was somebody who like cracked, or not the Panthers game, it was actually in the Raiders game. Somebody knocked the hell out of like Jacoby Myers or some shit like that. And it's just like, dude, we don't want to see that, man. We don't want to see it. All of a sudden everybody's like kneeling and shit. And it's like, whoa, all like your celebration just turned into like, shit, did I just kill a guy on the field? So why are you doing it? Just don't do that. You know what I mean? Like, so I don't know. That's a tangent. It's a random tangent, but like, we want to see the game played at a safer level. Like we want to see people play out their careers and not just get murdered on the field. You know what I mean? So moving on to Deontay Johnson. Greg Dulcich expected to be sidelined multiple weeks. So 5 hours ago, Denver Broncos tight end Greg Dulcich hamstring is expected to be out multiple weeks after injuring the same hamstring in week 1. After injuring the same hamstring in the week 1 loss to the division rivals on Sunday that caused him to miss the team's first 5 games in 2022. Okay, so damn, he's injured this hamstring before last year, and then the last 2 games to the end of the season as well. So this is the same hamstring that's been cropping up all last season, and now it's cropping up again. So the Broncos plan to take it slow with the second-year tight end. If the 23-year-old goes on injury reserved, he'll be required to miss at least 4 games. In standard-sized fantasy leagues, managers shouldn't feel the need to hang on to Dulcich if they don't have the... Okay, yeah. So while Dulcich is out, Adam Troutman, who caught 5 of his targets in the season opener, will take on a bigger pass-catching role as the number 1 tight end. Keith Hernandez and Adam Schefter again reporting. So, bro, like... This team is already banged up. Whatever expectations people had of this team going into this year, even after the Judy situation, because Judy's not going to be around for at least maybe 1 to 2 more weeks. We might see him back at week 3 at the earliest. This just doesn't help, right? And so whatever expectations you might have had after that situation, like they're gone now. They're completely gone, at least for the first part of the season. And yeah, they probably will lose their next couple games. They might even lose more than that, depending on what, the vibes are like going forward here. Is Russ cooked? I don't know. Let's look at this box score real quick. I don't want to try to jump the shark because they're I don't know if that's the right saying, but I want to look at the box scores kind of sequentially here, but we'll check out some of them. So yeah, this was the game, like I said, where Jacoby Myers just got lit up, which he was doing great, by the way. He had 10 targets, he had 9 catches, 81 yards. Now he's actually in concussion protocol. We'll probably see that report in a bit. But you saw Russell go 34 passes, complete 27 of them, only had 177 yards but 2 touchdowns. He threw for 2 touchdowns. So that 108 pass rating, not terrible. He didn't have to really do much. Actually, never mind. They lost this game. For some reason, I thought they won. Yeah, he probably feels maybe some ownership here for the loss. I mean, he should. And wow, I mean, the fact that this game went only 17-16, they played in Denver, they got the loss. Greggy D is out for the foreseeable future. Like I said, it's not a hot start for them right now. I don't see them having a successful next few weeks. Not that Greg Dulcich is like that impactful, but at the very least, until they get, I could be wrong though. Anything can happen, but it's the NFL any given Sunday kind of thing. But until at least Jerry Jeudy comes back, I think you just kind of really temper your expectations in a big way for this team. Russell Wilson played pretty well. He only got sacked twice. That's one of the big problems we know about Russell Wilson. He just loves to get sacked. I mean, like, being facetious, he doesn't like to get sacked. Obviously, it's sarcasm, but he just gets sacked a shit ton. And so only 2 sacks, not bad. Not that the Raiders defense is like that scary or anything like that, but I need to see this yardage total come up before I'm even confident about any of these pass catchers. And I get it's just week 1, but like, I know Cortland Sutton was somebody people were looking at as a plug-in play for this week because of the absence of Jerry Jeudy. That wasn't correct. Samaje actually did pretty well in the passing game. I would say the bright spot here is literally Samaje Perine, because he got work in the run game. He got 8 touches for 41 yards. He got work in the pass game. He got 4 catches for 37 yards. And frankly, I could see him falling into the end zone every now and then. So I think if we're talking about like the only reliable player on this team, maybe it's Javonte Williams too. But even then, Javonte, he had 4 catches for 5 yards. That's terrible. What were those catches? Half of them were for just negative yardage, right? If you're averaging 1.3 yards per catch. So clearly Samaje is the only trustworthy person here. If you need to go snatch up Adam Troutman off the waiver wire, maybe. But we saw he had 5 catches for 34 yards, no touchdown. And Greg Dulcich only had really 2 targets on, 2 catches on 2 targets for the 22 yards. So even if you combine those two scores, it's not super encouraging. I guess the encouraging thing is that the 7 targets, right? That's a lot for a tight end. Adam Troutman's a pretty talented guy. I think you see some of those targets even in the red zone. So sure, go get Adam Troutman as like a super desperation plug and play if you have nobody on tight end. But that I would just stay away from this team. Moving on, MRI confirms a complete Achilles tear for Aaron Rodgers. So if you've literally been paying attention at all for the last 24 hours or last even just 14, 16 hours essentially after last night's game, or even at the beginning of last night's game, you knew that Aaron Rodgers essentially is donezo. It was speculated that maybe it was an ankle. The first thing I said when I saw him go down was like, oh shit, he tweaked his ankle there for sure. Like, he immediately was just like, I can't get up. Come help me up off this field. He was carted into the locker room. And then once that happened, it was like, okay, maybe it's a little bit crazier than just a little ankle tweak, right? Like that kind of made me think this is a bit more serious. Sure enough, this morning, MRI confirms that New York Jets, what they feared, that the 4-time MVP quarterback Aaron Rodgers suffered a complete tear of his left Achilles in the win over the Buffalo Bills. So they won that game. It was a great game. Despite the Aaron Rodgers thing, it was just super sad to see that happen, right? Like, whatever you feel about the guy, like, you never want to see stuff like that happen to anybody. And so, despite that, the Jets rallied. And maybe the Bills fumbled a little bit. No pun intended. I mean, 4 turnovers for our boy Josh Allen, but 3 of them picks. But yeah, dude, like, this is rough. This is terrible. All the Garrett Wilson owners, I mean, first and foremost, obviously Aaron Rodgers, like, prayers up to you. Feels bad, man. Like, this is the worst thing that could happen. One of the worst things, obviously not the worst. There are definitely worse things that can happen, but like, it's pretty bad. Your season's over for sure. Maybe his career's just donezo. I hope he doesn't retire, but just hearing about what he would have to go through for recovery of this injury. I mean, 38 going on 39-year-old. He's 39 actually. So 39 going on 40 next year. I don't know how you make that. Yeah, I don't see the path to recovery for him being at least easy or doable, or him even seeing it being worth it, right? So I'm just going to say, at the beginning of this preseason, when we saw Aaron Rodgers sitting on the sideline, smiling, dapping fools up on the sideline with the Jets, being all buddy with Robert Saleh, and just looking very at home in a headset. The first thing I said was, damn, Aaron Rodgers looks good in a headset. He just looks good, like just sitting there kind of in control. He has a very demanding, or I guess a very authoritative presence. And he seems like he's got everything under control. Like I guess not authoritative. He has a calming presence, I would say. If I look at him and see him on my sideline, I know he's got my back just because he's just one of the greats, right? So, and it really does feel like, unlike any other point in Aaron Rodgers' career, that he finally is embracing more of a mentorship role. That literally for the first time, I think, ever in his career, did we see flashes of like what he could look like after his football career's over, at least as a player. Maybe he wants to be an assistant coach. Maybe he wants to be an OC. Maybe he eventually wants to be a head coach. I don't know. All I'm saying is he looked pretty good on the sideline with a headset. I know this is kind of like a little maybe too soon to be making light of this. What I'm really saying is the Jets are going to be fine in the sense that they'll probably, especially if the Bills continue to collapse the way they are. Miami's the favorites in that division now, like hands down. I think even Vegas already set the odds that Miami's the favorites now. So that's a done deal, no longer a conversation. However, the Jets didn't just like go away because they lost Aaron Rodgers. They're not just going to, they won last night's game against the Bills, literally with Aaron going down, having only played 4 plays. So I think we're jumping to the gun a little bit when we're saying like, oh, the Jets season is over. They might very well just even make the playoffs. I don't think they'll win this division unless something crazy happens to the Dolphins. Never would want to suggest that or consider that. But like, it's not just a foregone conclusion here. They have a solid squad still. I mean, they have, the defensive and offensive rookie of the years still coming in and playing pretty high level football. Garrett Wilson definitely sees a lot of a downgrade because of Aaron Rodgers no longer being his quarterback. But yeah, I mean, it basically no need to over report this because again, like this has been reported on ad nauseum today. Like I was trying to find other news and it's just like the only thing people wanted to talk about was this. It's just like, I get it. It's Aaron Rodgers. He's the biggest headline of the day. But after a certain point, like we've talked it out to the point where there's nothing left to be said here. So I'm going to move on, but it sucks. I feel you Giants fans or Jets fans, man, rough to lose your guy like that. So yeah, anyways, Myles Gaskin signed to the active roster in Minnesota. So the Minnesota Vikings signed Myles Gaskins to their 53-man active roster on Tuesday from their practice squad. Gaskin was let go by the Dolphins on the summer, but latched quickly on to the Minnesota Vikings and was on the active roster for Week 1 in their loss to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The 26-year-old didn't see the field at all to start the season, but he should once again be active for Week 2 with the Philadelphia Eagles this Thursday night. Gaskin's going to struggle to find work behind Alexander Mattison and Ty Chandler unless one of them misses time with an injury. So, again, we don't even want to hypothesize about that or maybe speculate about that. But this is just something to keep an eye on. It's news. It's relevant for sure. You're not going out and grabbing Myles Gaskins just yet, but you are kind of maybe keeping an eye on this backfield, and you weren't really stoked about what Alexander Mattison did for you this week anyways. Let's look at that box score. I think it's a natural kind of moment to do that. Where the hell are the Vikings here? There they are. So we take a look. Justin Jefferson had 12 targets. Awesome. Jordan Addison, 6 targets, and that one deep touchdown that he had looked fantastic. So you're super stoked if you have either of those guys. Probably even more stoked if you have Jordan Addison because you are taking a shot on him like a late round rookie flyer. Obviously, Justin Jefferson, you know what you're getting with him. And I think I want to say out of him and maybe Tyreek, everybody else in the first round essentially kind of busted for you. Like Nick Chubb didn't do too well. A.J. Brown didn't really do that great. Both players I have. Stephon Diggs played pretty well, actually. He played okay. He got decent points for you there, but it was really just Tyreek and Justin Jefferson and then like everybody else in the first round sub 20 points, which you want your first rounder to get you. You're fine with like 15, 16 points for sure as like their floor, but you're hoping they get you 20 plus each week because they're supposed to be the stud, right? They're supposed to be your baller. And Justin Jefferson showed you why you picked him up, where you picked him up. Jamar Chase definitely didn't. And so, but we're looking over here at Alexander Madison, and he had 11 carries for 34 yards. Oof, garbage. Buccaneers are a pretty tough run D, so that might have attributed to that. Plus, they threw the ball 44 times. I mean, Kirk was cooking. He threw for 2 touchdowns. He had that interception, but 344 yards, 150 of them going to my boy Justin Jefferson. So they were throwing all over the field here, and obviously it was just like the game script didn't really call for that heavy of a rush attack. That said, his averages were low, 3.1. 11 carries for 34 yards, not good. His long one run was 9 yards, and then he got 3 catches on 4 targets for 10 yards, and then he did have that receiving touchdown. So that was the thing that salvaged his day, but you still weren't stoked about what you saw Alexander Madison do this week. So I guess the big takeaway here is maybe this signing of Gaskins kind of inadvertently depresses Alexander Madison's value a little bit. I mean, you probably drafted Alexander Madison hopefully to be like your RB2 at most anyways. So you're not expecting him to like carry your team by any means, but this just makes it a little, more of a murky situation when you talk about the backfield here with Alexander Madison and Ty Chandler and now Myles Gaskins. So moving on, Ian Book working out for the 49ers. Honestly, don't really care about this. We'll move on. He's a free agent quarterback, which is weird. Why are they doing this, man? Like, why'd you give up Trey Lance? Real quick, why'd you give up Trey Lance if now you're working out more quarterbacks? I don't know. Maybe they just wanted to like get something for Trey because they felt like it was a complete lost cause with him. But now they're working out free agent quarterbacks off the street. I don't know. Moving on. Kenneth Gainwell uncertain for Thursday night. So this is unfortunate. 4 hours ago, Philadelphia Eagles running back Kenneth Gainwell rib is dealing with a rib injury and remains a wait and see for the team's week 2 game on Thursday night against the Minnesota Vikings. So we saw Gainwell actually have a pretty decent week 1. Let's look at his stats real quick. Kenneth Gainwell had 14 carries, so he led that backfield in touches. For 54 yards, and then he also had 4 catches on 4 targets for 20 yards. So he didn't get in the end zone. In fact, it was Devontae Smith who was the lone person who got that touchdown on that team. Other than I think the defense got a touchdown, like a pick 6. But you're encouraged by the volume here, and absolutely by the average. 3.9 is pretty high. Philadelphia Eagles are a great offensive line. They're probably top 5 at least in the NFL in terms of offensive line and block win ratios. So block win rates. So having a having a running back on a team like that is awesome and ideal. That said, he's a kind of a smaller guy. This volume is a little surprising to me. I know he's talented enough to maybe get that role and maybe have the lead role in that backfield. Other than obviously Jalen Hurts. I would go out and pick him up. You're not playing him this week, though. I don't know if he's even going to be here tomorrow or on Thursday. I don't think he's going to be active on Thursday. We'll see what the news is tomorrow. But today, it's very much so the news is, yeah, he's probably not going to play, right? He was listed as a non-participant on the team's estimated injury report on Monday, so his status is one to keep an eye on this week, especially after he served as the leader of the team's backfield in week 1. The 24-year-old is unable to return. If the 24-year-old is unable to return on Thursday or is limited in any way, DeAndre Swift, Boston Scott, and Rashad Penny, who was a healthy scratch in the season opener, would form some sort of 3-man committee. So that's also part of it. You're not necessarily blowing all your fab or blowing your like high waiver priority, if that's the type of league format you're in, on Kenneth Gainwell. Like, there are other guys I'd rather go get, like Tyler Algier for one. If Tyler Algier, because I think he's only owned in like 48% of leagues right now, that needs to be 100%. He needs to be on everybody's roster. I'm sure I'm not the only person who you've heard say this. It's kind of a no-brainer if you watched the game at all, or even saw his stats, after that game. So Tyler Algier should be 100% rostered, even with the Bijan situation. They will both be relevant, similar to how Cordarrelle P and Tyler Algier were both relevant fantasy-wise last year. So if we're talking about picking up a Tyler Algier over Kenneth Gainwell, it's a no-brainer for me. There are also other people, I think even like a Kyron Williams, from the Rams, who had a great week 1. He had 2 touchdowns. I'd pick him up over Kenneth Gainwell, right? So I'm not just sitting here rushing out to grab Kenny G. I know there are a lot of people who are happy about what they saw from him, and they think they could see maybe a better performance from him, or more performances similar to this or better in the future. So I'm not sold on that, though. I know this backfield, you're not going to see DeAndre Swift only get 1 carry going forward. Just putting that out there. Like, Kenny G is the guy who they had, from last year. Boston Scott is obviously someone who they had last year as well. But this is DeAndre Swift's first year on this team. It was Miles Sanders, who they basically traded to get DeAndre Swift, or at least they got rid of Miles Sanders, brought in DeAndre Swift, which was supposed to essentially be like the replacement for Miles. But now we're seeing Kenneth Gainwell get the lead touches in the backfield, or leading the backfield in touches. So we'll see. That's not going to stay the same, like I said. And people drafted DeAndre Swift. Man, how sad are you if you're a DeAndre Swift owner right now? He didn't even get it even worked into the passing game, which was what we thought he was going to do. That's what we thought his upside was, right? Was passing work. Nope. Nope. That didn't pan out. So yeah, we'll keep an eye on this, but this backfield's murky. And like I said, this is a big waiver wire week. Week 1 waiver wire is always huge in terms of finding guys that just went undrafted and that end up being season-long guys, like the Nakuas probably, and like the Kyron Williams, or like the Tyler Algiers, which again, I don't know how he wasn't drafted. I'm beating myself up for not drafting Tyler Algier everywhere, because I mean, looking back at it, and even going into it, I was telling this to everybody. I literally should do a little hyper clip or a super cut of all the times I was like, yeah, this backfield will sustain. That's actually why I was so low on Bijan, right? This backfield is gonna be able to sustain 2 running backs fantasy wise, and I'm not willing to take the first round value guy when there's another guy who's going much later who will probably perform at, if not better than what this other guy is, because maybe the volume or whatever. And I didn't follow my own advice. I followed half of it by not drafting Bijan, top 5 or whatever, but I didn't follow the second half of it, which was the real takeaway should have been just go get Tyler Algier and you'll be happy. And I didn't do that, so I'm really pissed about that. But Steelers optimistic about Pat Freiermuth. So this is good news, because as we talked about just not too long ago, Pat Freiermuth left that game with a chest injury and essentially gave up his body for that 1 touchdown. But that being said, shit. Who is calling me from Rocky Mountain, North Carolina? I don't even know. That sounds like a fake. Sounds like a made up place. All right. So Pat Freiermuth left that game. Let's see what they say. He injured his chest in week 1 and was forced to leave the game. Although it doesn't sound like a serious injury, he may not have to miss time at all. Okay, great. Before leaving, the 24-year-old caught his only target for a 3-yard touchdown, like we were saying, salvaged his day. Even though Freiermuth's injury doesn't seem serious, he'll be an even riskier low-end tight end 1 if he's questionable with the Steelers playing on Monday night in week 2. So that's also part of it. It's like a Monday night game. That's kind of a double-edged sword. It's good because it's giving him more time to recover, but it's also like it gives you less opportunities to make a pivot play if he's questionable or out for that game. So just have a backup ready. I actually have Pat Freiermuth on one of my lineups. In one of my leagues, I have to go pick up a tight end as a safety valve, essentially, just in case Pat doesn't play this week. I don't want to. I might be risky and not do it, to be honest, depending on, because that league is pretty deep. And I also have only 5 bench spots on that roster. So, putting a backup tight end as one of those roster spots kind of feels bad. But we'll see. We'll see what we do there. Hopefully he plays, and we'll just keep an eye tomorrow and Thursday as to if he practices or if there's any other sort of news coming out of there, good or bad. So moving on, Jason Peters, 41-year-old offensive tackle. Jason Peters is signing with the Seahawks after Charles Cross, I don't know why I'm laughing, and Abraham Lucas knee suffered injuries in the Week 1 loss to the Rams. Yeah, so the Seahawks looked trash. They looked so bad on Sunday. Let's look at this. Excuse me. Let's look at their box score, because, I mean, if you watch that game, if you are an Eagles fan, I mean, I'm obviously here in LA. I am not a Rams fan by any means. I will still cheer for them if they are doing good things. And so, unless they're doing good things against people that I'm playing in fantasy, like Geno Smith. That said, the Rams came out and they actually shut a lot of people up, including myself, this week. Nobody expected them to win this game. Nobody expected them to really do much at all. And they went in to Seattle and beat them pretty convincingly. Like, Seattle's defense looked like they had no answers. Rams defense looked like they were just flying around, hitting guys. They sacked Geno twice for 17 yards. There was a pick. Oh, actually, sorry, not a pick. But I believe there was even like a fumble, potentially. They might have turned somebody over, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe not. Regardless. Sorry, I'm looking at the wrong one. 3 tackles for loss. Yeah, 7 QB hits. So they were getting after Geno. Geno got hit 7 times. Two times was sacked. So, his QBR doesn't tell the whole story. Actually, it was pretty in the floor, but his rating was 84% here. He only had 112 yards, averaged 4.3 yards per attempt, and only threw for 26 times. So, like, what on earth was going on in Seattle this week? Like, we don't know. Maybe those 2 offensive linemen going down actually was a much more significant deal, because I think one of them might have went down early, and then later on the second guy went down. So either way, they weren't fully loaded. Essentially, they weren't fully equipped with all their guys if they lost 2 offensive linemen. So that might explain just the poor quarterback play and just the real lack of what we thought would be a high octane offense. And I hate using that phrase. It's kind of funny, but because what does that even mean? But no, I mean, truly, like, we thought this was going to be high flying. We thought that Geno, from what we saw last year, was going to continue that and maybe even take another step forward, right? On a bad Rams team, against a bad Rams team. So who knows? Maybe this is a little bit of, okay, the Seahawks thought this was a foregone conclusion, so they didn't prepare as well as they probably should have. That happens. I mean, these are professionals here. This is the NFL. This is the highest level of this sport. But at the same time, that sometimes we're susceptible to just kind of like getting a little lax when we feel like we're not forced to bring a particular level of play to the table, because we think we could, maybe accomplish our goals just by kind of doing the bare minimum almost. Not saying that Seattle did the bare minimum on Sunday, but it definitely feels like they left a lot, not only to be desired, but they definitely left a lot out when you're talking about just what they're capable of, what we've seen them be capable of. A lot of these guys are the same, right? And it's nice to, okay, so the one thing is encouraging to see is that they did give Kenneth Walker 12 carries, despite being down most of that game. And despite maybe feeling like Kenneth Walker, is hobbled because of that groin, we see now that didn't really affect him a whole lot. He had that 115-yard long run, which was nice. His average is great, 5.3 yards per carry. Would have been nice to see him get in the end zone. But he did also still have 4 catches on 5 targets, only for 3 yards. It's unfortunate. That's going to change. But it's nice to see that he got involved, at least in the pass game. So you're encouraged by Kenneth Walker. You're madly discouraged by Geno Smith. And I am somebody who has Geno Smith in my main league. I am considering, I don't want to be super knee-jerky here, but I'm considering dropping Geno Smith for somebody else. I don't know. I don't know if I can do another week like this with Geno. I just don't think I can do it. I don't think he will do that to you, but the fact that he did this already, I'm just like warning signs, red flags. Tyler Lockett had 4 targets, only caught 2 passes. That I think is a almost a bigger storyline than maybe the Geno Smith storyline here. Obviously, it's all connected. Geno Smith had a terrible game. He only completed 16 passes, and he only threw 26 times. But if you were watching Tylock, he just didn't look like himself. I don't know what, maybe he's getting a little older. Maybe it's like, and he's not even that old. He's 20. Oh, he's 30. Okay, so yeah, but still, I mean, you could be serviceable, like well into your 30s. We've seen plenty of receivers do it, but like, he just didn't look himself. So I don't know what's going on there. I don't know if maybe he's hobbled with something. Tylock has been somebody in the past who, and just the Seahawks in general, are the type of team that they're kind of wonky with their injury reporting. They don't always report all the injuries. And sometimes they falsely report. Like, I'm surprised they haven't gotten in trouble yet, because you'll hear about injuries that just like appear out of nowhere. Just like, wait, he was dealing with this injury? Like, he was dealing with a freaking ankle? Like, what, you didn't want to mention that? Like, oh, but he looked good. He was looking good in practice. But all of a sudden on Thursday, or like Saturday, you hear, oh, he's questionable because of such and such injury that just cropped up. Like that I feel like is more common with the Seahawks than any other team. Still, something's up with Tylock. I'm going to get to the bottom of it eventually. Now is not the time because there's other stuff to talk about, but I'm just saying right now, be a little worried about Tylock. He might just be straight benchable for the foreseeable future until we figure out what the hell is going on with him. I would not trust him. So I'm like basically benching everybody except DK Metcalf and Kenneth Walker on the Seahawks going forward. And then to quickly touch on the Los Angeles Rams side of things, Matthew Stafford shows that he's totally fine. I mean, he didn't throw any touchdowns, but he didn't need to. And I think we owe him a little, at least I owe him a little bit of an apology. I was kind of worried that Stafford was just going to kind of be a shell of himself this year. That's why I was down a little bit on Cooper Kupp, even before Cooper Kupp got, this hamstring that cropped up. So yeah, I think we saw a lot of great stuff from him. So much so that, yeah, you can probably go pick him up, off waivers. I might say, like, going forward, he's more reasonably, startable than Geno Smith right now. I don't know. That might be a crazy take. But then again, I'm the guy who benched Joe Burrow this week for Jared Goff on Thursday. And we all know how that turned out. It really was hard to do. And I was even telling people out there that it was not the smart play, probably. And I'm a crazy dude for doing it. It didn't actually help me win my matchup, unfortunately, because I just, it's not like Jared Goff lit it up or anything like that. But we all know what we saw from Joe Burrow this week. It was bad. He only scored like 3 or 4, fantasy points or some shit like that this week. So clearly Jared Goff was the right play there. And I feel vindicated a little bit by having made that call, despite it being pretty out there and zany. But I've seen Joe Burrow essentially start off slow before. I didn't draft him to like start week 1 or week 2, me personally, just because I know that without a preseason, like, any player is going to struggle their first game or 2 back. But like Joe Burrow, especially, just for some reason, like, it just takes him a little bit of time to get back in. He's, he missed preseason. So yeah. Anyways, the big takeaways here from the Rams side of things, other than Matt Stafford looking pretty good, was their run game. So the reason why Matty Stafford threw for 38 times for no touchdowns was because they literally had 2 guys who looked really good in Cam Akers and Kyron Williams get all the touchdowns. They ran for 2 and 1 respectively. Kyron Williams ran for 2, Cam Akers ran for 1. So, and they look damn good doing it. So if you have this going on, you don't really need Matty Stafford to throw, because first of all, who do you have at receivers? You've got Tutu Atwell, who had 8 targets. He had 119 yards on 6 catches. Incredible. Looked great, actually. Looked really good. Like, he's developing into a solid NFL receiver. And I think if it wasn't for Puka Nacua, he would be the main guy to target in this offense on the waiver wire. But Puka had 15 targets. You can't ignore that. They had the same exact yardage, but Puka had almost double the amount of targets. So this might be a situation where, because Cooper Kupp's gone, right, for literally maybe even the year, we don't know. Like we have no idea what's going on with Cooper Kupp. So right now, Puka Nacua is clearly that number one target. At least in this game, we saw he was Matty Stafford's favorite guy. He threw 15 times at this dude, right? Despite that, and we thought that was going to be Tyler Higbee, maybe, who was going to get a bunch of those targets. Tyler Higbee only got 3 targets. So we were all kind of wrong on that. But Puka was definitely somebody who was like, hey, keep your eye on him. I wasn't expecting 15 targets out of the gate for this guy. I'm targeting him 100%. But if you're somebody who doesn't have like a super high waiver priority, you don't want to blow all your fab on this guy, whatever the main reason being, like, because I know Puka's the hottest, it's him, and if Tyler Algier is still available, it's Tyler Algier. But those are like the 2 hottest waiver snipes right now, waiver snags. So if you're not in a position to blow your high priority waiver prio or a bunch of fab, you're probably not going to get this guy. So I guess what I'm saying is settle for Tutu. He still got you 119 yards on those 8 targets and 6 catches. He looked good. In fact, arguably looked better than Puka. Puka just literally had more targets and had those 10 catches, right? So Tutu Atwell, I'm fine with putting him on my bench as well. I don't think you just start him right away. But if you need somebody on this team because you think that this team actually showed I think everybody who was down on them, including myself, showed everybody that they actually are kind of serious. Like, Matty Stafford still got a lot left in the tank, it looks like. He threw 38 times. He looked good. So we should start respecting this team a little bit more. And I think if you miss out on Puka, don't be mad. Don't be mad, because you could still snag Tutu. And I think that's totally fine. Kyren Williams and Cam Akers. I think Kyren Williams is absolutely snaggable right now. I think he's owned in only like 10% of leagues. So go get Kyren. But this is going to be a situation where you're not going to be able to reliably play Kyren every single week. We're not always going to see 15 carries for 52 yards and 2 touchdowns. We're just not. So this is his ceiling for sure. I think he's still worth a grab, especially for some Cam Akers insurance. Whether Cam Akers goes into the doghouse again, because he's been very susceptible to just getting slammed into the doghouse out of nowhere because of his behavior or whatever the hell is going on there. But or maybe, again, injury, we never want to project that. But the insurance pickup here would be Kyren Williams. So for running back depth, I'm for sure picking up Kyren Williams if I am not able to pick up maybe some of the other guys like the Kenneth Gainwells. But again, I'm kind of avoiding him. Tyler Algier, I know, again, is available in one of my leagues. I'm literally going after him as hard as I can. Like, I think I have the 3rd top priority there. I doubt I'm going to get him, because unless people just like didn't realize he was out there, then I'm sure somebody else is going to snag him. But Kyren Williams is easily somebody who I would for sure pick up with a waiver priority if I needed to, if I didn't have reliable running backs, which there are tons of running backs that did not perform for you this week. Tons. So, and when we can go through those. But we're looking now at this is a funny headline, and then we can move on to the actual box scores and game breakdowns. But Joe Flacco interested in a Jets reunion. So I don't even know why people report on this, but 2 hours ago, free agent quarterback quarterback Joe Flacco is interested in returning to the New York Jets, according to Rich Simony of ESPN. Flacco started 4 games and appeared in 5 for the Jets last season, completing 57.6% of his passes for 1,051 yards and 5 touchdowns. And 3 interceptions. We already know about the Aaron Rodgers thing, so even if Flacco is signed, Zach Wilson will likely remain the starter in New York. Up to this point, there is no evidence that the Jets have a mutual interest in a reunion. Thanks, Jackson Sparks and Rich Simony. So, Yeah, again, it's like, why are we even reporting on this, especially if there's no mutual interest in a reunion? Like, of course the Jets don't really want to see Flacco, suit up again for them. They don't care. There's plenty of other options out there, but it's nice that Flacco feels like he could still do it. And maybe he's stayed ready so he doesn't have to get ready and he can actually play still, potentially. Last time we saw him, he wasn't that great. So I don't see this happening, but it's just a cute little headline. Thanks for that. All right, so we're going to go through each of these games and just go through the box scores and talk about kind of the main headlines of each game and what spoke to me and kind of what the big takeaways are for each game. So first game we're going to cover, Panthers, Falcons, right? Biggest takeaway here, Bryce Young threw 38 times. That I don't know if that's good or bad. He only completed 20% or 20 of them, so bad in terms of his completion percentage. He threw 2 ints, and his QBR was through the floor. This is just, I think you blame a lot of this on his offensive line and the fact that his receivers, like he's got Terrace Marshall Jr., Jonathan Mingo, Laviska Shenault, for crying out loud. Hayden Hurst was his leading targeted receiver. You know what I mean? He only caught 41 yards, 5 catches for 41 yards in that touchdown. And just like, it just looked tough though. Like if you watched this game, Bryce Young struggled every snap. He was constantly running for his life. I mean, the fact that he threw 38 times still, despite having virtually no time to throw, just shows me that, like, yes, they were in a bad game script for most of the game, but also they just really couldn't get their run game going. At least their run game maybe came alive like when it was too late, right? When the game was essentially already over. They didn't lean on the run maybe when they needed to with their young quarterback. You don't want your rookie quarterback throwing 38 times in their first game out and only completing 20 of those passes against a team like the Falcons, who aren't even like that good. But they did get a pick 6. The Falcons did, so he threw 2 interceptions, and I think one of them went back for 6. So like the Falcons feasted on this young man, and no pun intended, but like, get this man some help, right? Just he's not going to be fine if this is how it continues to go. This is an easier matchup in terms of the rest of the season for them. Like, they're going to be a lot tougher matchups for this guy. So anyway, so Bryce Young, you're a little discouraged about what you saw just based off of what the situation looks like with the offensive line and maybe just the receivers he has around him. You're good if you're Hayden Hurst owners. Like, you're like, okay, just the fact that Hayden Hurst is the number 1 target in that offense, and like you've locked that in, that's the best case scenario for a tight end. Just you're on a bad team that throws a lot, and you're the main target on that team. Beautiful. Mwah, chef's kiss. I wish I had more of Hayden Hurst this year. I might actually go try to trade for him sneakily if people weren't super stoked about his performance. But still, 5 catches, 41 yards, and a touchdown is excellent for a tight end. Like, that's how bad that position is. So you probably have to give up a lot, maybe not a lot, but like people aren't just going to go giving up Hayden Hurst like for nothing. So that said, I have my work cut out for me on that front. But as far as, we're talking about the rest of these guys, Miles Sanders had 18 carries for 72 yards. Not terrible. Chuba Hubbard had 9 carries for 60 yards. So this is not terrible. I mean, you're seeing some pretty good yardage here out of their run game. But like I said, it was kind of too little too late. It didn't do much for the actual game script because they still couldn't find a pass game. Like that, whatever success they had in the running game didn't translate to success in the pass game for them, which is normally, when you think about like NFL football or just like the basics of football in general, usually you establish the run first. It's a very common, tactic, and then that opens up the pass attack, right? So the pass attack, speaking of the pass attack, so the rushing attack, like, you're cool with Miles Sanders, you're cool with Chuba Hubbard. Chuba's probably on the waiver wire. I doubt a lot of people played Miles Sanders this week. I'd say Chuba's worth a stash, not over Kyron. I wouldn't put him, prioritize him over Kyron Williams or anything like that, but he's definitely worth a stash because they will need to. I mean, they don't want their young guy. They want Bryce Young throwing 38 times a game. They just simply do not. So Chuba might end up having double-digit carries each game, and he's efficient with his touches. We've seen him do this in the past. And then nobody I'd really say to pick up. I'd say Laviska Shenault is droppable. Jonathan Mingo at this point is for sure droppable. He only had 5 targets and caught 2 of them. I'd say Terrace Marshall Jr. is for sure droppable. All these guys are droppable if you're in like 10-man, 12-man leagues, 10-team, 12-team leagues. But like, I like until I see, and maybe this is just, again, super knee-jerk reaction, but until I see some type of rapport, and again, this wasn't like a super tough matchup. I mean, they did pick him off twice, and it was week 1, but like, you're going to see tougher matchups going on. It really going forward, in terms of the Panthers' schedule. So I don't trust any of these pass catchers. All of them are droppable except for Hayden Hurst. And, it's nice to see Miles Sanders got those 4 catches and stuff. So, yeah, like Terrace Marshall Jr., if you even have any of these guys, I'm sure a lot of these guys are just straight up on the waiver wire, right? But if you, for some reason, had Adam Thielen or Laviska or Jonathan Mingo or Terrace Marshall Jr., all of these guys are super droppable right now because they're just not doing anything for you, right? So get them off your team. I know I will be. I don't even have a lot of these guys on my teams, but just if I do, I'll find them and I'll get rid of them. Atlanta. Desmond Ridder only threw 18 times, completed 15 of them, though, and only had 115 yards in that touchdown that he threw to Bijan Robinson. But the thing I'll say about Desmond Ridder, he's basically, I mean, this is the Falcons' MO. This is literally what they did last year with Marcus Mariota. So it's like, are we surprised? I mean, you combine the touches for their running backs, and it's more than Desmond threw for, right? It's more attempts than what Desmond threw. So, that just means that it's clearly another year we're going to see of the Atlanta Falcons leaning on the run because they have a great offensive line, and they have really talented running backs behind it. So they don't have to throw the ball a lot. And that was evident, that was made clear this weekend. So Tyler Algier led this backfield with 15 carries, 75 yards, average 5, and he had 2 touchdowns. He had that one awesome long touchdown he broke off, or run that he broke off for 22 yards. So, like I said, it's crazy that Algier wasn't even picked up in most leagues. 48% of leagues he's rostered on. So 52% of leagues he's not owned. So it's like, what's going on? That needs to be 100%. Which it will be after this week. We're going to see he's essentially it's going to be Tyler Algier and Bijan Robinson are the quarter LP and Tyler Algier of last year. That's straight up. It's going to be the same formula. I have no doubt about that now. If anything, you might want to, if you can't pick up Tyler Algier on the waiver wire, it's almost going to be impossible to trade for him. I doubt anybody's going to, he's liquid gold right now. Like, anybody who actually has him because they drafted him like super duper late and just took like a dart throw on him, there's no chance they're going to give that guy up. And so, I mean, just good luck. But I will be looking for him every single league, in every single league that I can. And if I can get him on my squad, I will do so. That said, moving on to Bijan Robinson, he had 10 carries for 56 yards and averaged 5.6 and had that 21-yard rush, and then also had 6 catches for 27 yards and a touchdown. So, like, he literally led not only Atlanta's receiving squad in targets, but he also led him in catches. So he caught all those. He didn't lead them in yards, though. Kyle Pitts did have that one super sick catch, 34-yard long catch that he caught in between 2 defenders. He had to rotate his body around. It was actually pretty awesome to watch, and maybe gave you a little encouragement in terms of oh, maybe Kyle Pitts isn't bad. Maybe it's just this team doesn't care to use him like they should, because that was a spectacular catch. So Kyle Pitts, I have been super off on him already. I think this kind of just reaffirms that. And now I'm just looking at this Drake, this is the biggest issue here with the receiving team, right? Your number one wide receiver, that was like essentially one of the top candidates for rookie of the year last year, played exceptional last year with pretty subpar quarterback play, and he was targeted once this game. I mean, they won, so they didn't have to target him, I guess. But if you're like me and you drafted Drake London to be somebody, I flexed him, whatever. He's like my fourth wide receiver or whatever. But granted, I have AJ Brown, Garrett Wilson, and T. Higgins as my other three. So it's like they didn't really ball out for me this week. But Drake London put up a fat 0, and I don't even know how you do that. Maybe on this team it's possible, especially when you're only throwing 18 times in a game. Sure, there are going to be guys who only get one target and maybe don't even catch that target. Desmond Ridder had more receptions than Drake London. I don't know. That's stupid. That's funny, though. It was the one that he threw and they batted it and he caught it himself. He should have just knocked that down because he actually got -6 yards for that. But whatever. I mean, he's a second-year player. He's learning. But I don't want to spend too much time on this game because there are other games we got to cover. But the point being here is that you're not messing with any of these pass catchers. I mean, if you're Drake London owners, you're just benching Drake London until you hope you see something good from him. But you can't get rid of him. You drafted him way too high right now. Like you're not dropping Drake London just yet. So go get Tyler Algier. If he's still available, go get Chuba Hubbard if you need some running back depth. But those are the guys I would target from this game. Droppable guys, we've already talked about it. Terrace, Marshall Jr., Jonathan Mingo, Laviska Shenault, all those guys are droppable. Do not drop Drake London. Next box score. This one pains me to look at. Oof. So sad. But yeah, so not a lot to say about this game. Really just it was an aberration, right? Joe Burrow, he's rusty. He's coming back. He's coming back off of his calf strain, right? He didn't play this preseason. He didn't even have a training camp really. So he'll get back. This is his preseason right now, guys. Chill. Let's just chill. Let's just pump the brakes. He's not going to go 14 for 31 again. He's not going to have a QBR through the floor. He's not going to, he's not going to not throw any touchdowns again, hopefully. And he's not going to average 2.6 yards per attempt, y'all, and only throw for 82 yards. That's not going to happen. So I'm fine going forward with Joe Burrow. I don't think we have to worry about him just yet. I think Joe Mixon, you were encouraged by the volume, but again, it was just a bad game for the team overall. You're still not really worried about any sort of vulturing situation from anybody behind him. It's really just the Joe Mixon show in that backfield until further notice. The receiving of Cincinnati, man, Jamar Chase led the receiving unit with 9 targets, only caught 5 of them suckers for 39 yards, which is just like anytime you see Jamar Chase go like sub 10 average, something happened. Something's wrong. Like Jamar Chase doesn't average below like 12 yards per catch. It just doesn't happen. So, like that's just, again, an aberration. We won't even go through any of these other, there's nothing you need to do. So you're not dropping T. Higgins, even though he put up a 0. You're obviously not dropping him. You might drop Tyler Boyd. I could see maybe him being droppable until this offense starts to cook again, which could be soon. So, but if you're in deeper leagues, I would hold on to Tyler Boyd unless there's another guy like a Nakua or like even a Tutu Atwell. I would probably pick up over Tyler Boyd just because of volume and opportunity. So yeah, just ignore this game. If you're if you own any Bengals, ignore this game and look on to the future, because that is about all you can do right now. Cleveland. Deshaun Watson. went 16 of 29, had 154 yards. He didn't really need to throw a whole lot. I mean, he did throw 29 passes still. He had 1 interception, 1 touchdown, and he was sacked three times for 10 yards. He didn't look great. He did rush for that 1 touchdown, which was, I guess, exciting if you were a Deshaun Watson owner. But and it's funny, when we were watching, I was watching that game with my bro. It's like, you watch Deshaun Watson get a touchdown, rush in for the touchdown, and he's like doing all this like dancing and shit. It's like, bro, you're the last person that should be doing this. If anything, you should just be going straight to the ref and handing them the ball and being like, sorry, sorry, I almost bumped into you or some shit, and get back to the huddle or get back to the sideline. Because, like, frankly, nobody wants to see that guy doing this stuff, at least this year. Maybe give it another year. Let, like, kind of the bad taste in our mouths about whatever happened recently. Kind of, he did serve his time, quote unquote. But, like, I think you still have to give it another year of, like, being a little more humble. And then you can join in the fun of, like, all the celebrations and stuff. But I feel like maybe he still needs to serve his community service just a little bit. But that's just an aside. So in this backfield for Cleveland, Nick Chubb had 18 carries on 106 yards. That 5.9 average is great. Deshaun Watson has had that 5 rushes for the 45 yards and a touchdown. And then Jerome Ford, surprisingly, had 15 touches, but looked garbage with 36 yards, right? So Nick Chubb owners, you're not worried. You're just, that's kind of par for the course. They probably started giving Jerome Ford a lot of those touches later on in the game when it was clear that this game was over. I mean, this game was over in like the third quarter. Like, Joe Burrow was benched, in the fourth quarter, but like they could have benched him in the third quarter and you still would have been like, yeah, that's reasonable. Because they weren't getting it done. Like, it just wasn't happening. So that's not something that I think is going to be normal for Jerome Ford, like 15 carries a game. Like, no. You're kind of discouraged by the receiving from this team. You drafted Amari Cooper to be somebody. You drafted Njoku to be somebody. Amari only had 3 catches for 37 yards, and Njoku only had 2 catches for 24 yards. But Amari had 7 targets for only 3 catches, while Njoku had those 3 targets for those 2. So, and it was nice to see Nick Chubb actually getting involved in the pass game as well with 4 catches on 21 yards and 4 targets. But, man, like, seeing Elijah Moore and Amari Cooper tie for targets, but Elijah Moore leading the receiving team with 43 yards. Like, Elijah Moore, you probably didn't start him. You probably started Amari Cooper, and you're disappointed for sure. But you can't drop Amari, and I don't think you're reliably starting Elijah Moore every week. So I think you're just like, again, similar to this game was just weird. So you're going to look forward into the future a little bit more, optimistically, and say Amari Cooper will play much better than this. Excuse me. Deshaun Watson will throw a lot more accurately than this going forward. And, maybe this is at least encouraging if you're the Elijah Moore owners because of those 7 targets. That at least is encouraging. But you're not really encouraged about anything else other than maybe Nick Chubb. And like I said, you kind of have to start Amari Cooper unless next week you see more of the same. And maybe Elijah Moore ends up being the favorite target for Deshaun Watson for some weird reason. I don't know. But regardless, that I think is the big takeaway from this game is keep an eye on the targets situation for Amari Cooper and Elijah Moore. Waiver wire targets from either of these teams. I don't think there's really, unless Elijah Moore's out there, which he shouldn't be. I'm pretty sure he was drafted in most leagues I'm in. But if for whatever reason he's out on the waiver wire, he's worth scooping up. I don't think you go pick up Jerome Ford just yet. I don't think you go rushing to pick up like DPJ or even Harrison Bryant, who did get that touchdown, but he only had two targets. So you're just, you're holding Njoku. You're holding on to Elijah Moore if you have him, or you're picking him up if he's around. And then, Tyler Boyd's droppable, and that's about it. But let's go on to the next game. Like I said, this game will not be an indicator of... This game is an aberration for both teams, I think, in one way or another. So let's look at the Jags. So Trevor Lawrence attempted 32 passes, completed 24 of them. He had 241 yards, for 7.5 average, and he had the 2 touchdowns with the interception and was sacked twice. But his QBR was pretty decent, and he had a 103 passer rating. So you were pretty happy with Trevor Lawrence this week. Definitely you weren't upset. And they played against the Indianapolis Colts, who surprisingly made this game pretty tough. I think going into this week, we were all kind of looking at this game as just like, oh, it's a gimme. But I mean, if we look here, the game was tied at one point. Actually the Colts were even up in the third quarter. So it's like, the Colts, like I said, they made this game tough. Jacksonville had to win this game in the fourth quarter. They had to win this game, not only offensively, but the defense shut the Colts out in the fourth quarter. So, which is encouraging to see in terms of defensive play. But, the big takeaway here, I think Travis Etienne looks awesome. If anybody was worried about Tank Bigsby supplanting him or at least being a threat to potentially, he vultured that one tutty. But it honestly, it didn't even matter because Travis Etienne looked solid. And he had those 18 carries. He had 77 yards, 4.3 average is great. And then he had that one touchdown, which he broke off. It was like a 26-yarder. I think that was that long touchdown that they're talking about. He converted a touchdown. So you're encouraged for sure by all of this. I think if you're a Tank Bigsby owner, you're encouraged too. Even though his average was terrible, he only had 13 yards on 7 carries. But they used him in that short yardage goal line situation, right? He had that touchdown. So that is encouraging. At least you're not starting him right away, and you didn't draft him to start right away, but at least he's getting worked in. Maybe, there's hope that this backfield becomes more of a committee. I don't necessarily see that. I think they'll keep it about how it is with Travis Etienne getting the majority of the work, and then, Trevor Lawrence obviously getting his carries every so often, and then, you get that short yardage kind of Tank Bigsby role. And it's funny, they actually gave a couple carries to Jamal Agnew, who got negative yards, but we won't even bring that up. So you're holding on to Tank Bigsby. You're not starting him, though. You're definitely stoked about Travis Etienne. And that's pretty much the rush attack there. For the receiving of this team, man, Calvin Ridley, he's back. He is back. And for everyone who drafted him in the 3rd round, because that's where he was going, because there was just so much hype coming out from preseason and from minicamp and training camp and stuff. So that blew up his ADP. I was skeptical. I was much rather willing to take a shot on some other people in that 3rd round, like T. Higgins, for instance, who, the difference is night and day there. Again, that's an aberration from T, but man, Calvin Ridley, he showed us all why he was one of the best receivers in the league before he, exited for a couple of years for his, mental health reasons and other reasons as well. And I think he even got suspended for a season because of gambling and some crazy shit like that. But he's back. He's super back. He's fully back. And his name's Calvin Ridley, y'all. And you better get used to hearing Lawrence to Ridley touchdown connection because, he had 11 targets, 8 catches for 101 yards and that touchdown. He just looked so good. And I'm now kind of beating myself up a little bit about having not drafted him a lot because I was a little skeptical about maybe how high his ADP was, but it was worth every penny. And so you're stoked if you did that, if you picked him up. Zay Jones, 7 targets. He caught 5 of them for 55 yards and a touchdown. He looked good too. He looked good last year. We knew he wasn't going to just go away out of this offense. I think the biggest, whoa, what happened is Christian Kirk, because they paid him last year. He was their number 1 receiver last year, along with Zay Jones, who's maybe the 1A, 1B type of situation. Still finished as a top 24, maybe top 25, maybe top 30 receiver, which is serviceable, right? In fantasy. But he only got 3 targets this week. And Zay Jones and Calvin Ridley are clearly the top 2 guys there. They just look better. They are getting more targets clearly. And I think they just have a better rapport now with Trevor Lawrence than Kirk does. I think Kirk is just phasing out, unfortunately. You know what I mean? It sucks. I actually know a guy Matty Boots, actually, who's, friend of the show, friend in real life. He is a big Christian Kirk guy, and I actually think he has him in our main league, in Los League, but I don't think he's stoked about what he saw on Sunday. I know he's upset. He actually, when he gets back from Utah, we'll have to sit down and have a nice chat about Christian Kirk. Christian Kirk, borderline droppable. Maybe wait one more week if you're like, man, I drafted him in like the 5th or 6th round or wherever you got him. Like, I wasted too high of a draft capital pick on him. I don't want to just write him off just yet. It's just week 1. Maybe, like it was a fluke, or maybe it was just the game script. I don't know. I mean, the game script, they threw a lot. They threw 32 times. If your dude is only getting 3 targets out of 32 attempts, that means 29 other times you were being looked, you weren't even getting looked at, right? So either you weren't getting open, or you're just not a major part of this offense, but either of those things are not good. So yeah, I think he's borderline droppable. Let's wait one more week though, I would say, before we just go cutting Christian Kirk completely loose. But you were not encouraged at all. And yeah, I think you're just you were happy with basically every other performance. Travis Etienne, Evan Ingram, Zay Jones, Calvin Ridley. You probably didn't even start Zay Jones. He's probably someone who you should go pick up on the waiver. I'd rather have Zay Jones than Christian Kirk at this point. I'm just gonna say that. So moving on to the Indianapolis side, this game got so out of hand that I think Anthony Richardson got hurt, right? Yeah, that's what happened. Anthony Richardson got knocked out of this game, and so that's why Gardner Minshew had to take those 2 snaps. Related the following: that he bruised his left knee late in the contest, but will be fine. Okay, so that's good news that he'll be fine, but that was what knocked him out of that game late in the game. Gardner Minshew came in and took 2 attempts, didn't complete any of them, whatever. But the big thing here is Anthony Richardson was sacked 4 times. We see that sometimes with rushing quarterbacks. It's interesting. You would think like it's the opposite of this, but we saw it with Russell Wilson. We saw it with like even Joe Burrow and even like Aaron Rodgers one year. It's like when you quote unquote are a quarterback, I guess, who can run. Maybe less so Joe Burrow and Aaron Rodgers because they're not necessarily known for running, even though they can scramble, right? It's typical to see those players get sacked a bunch. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's offensive line related. Who knows? But just it's interesting to notice that he got sacked 4 times. That said, he looked really good despite getting sacked 4 times and throwing an interception. I say looked really good by just fantasy purposes. He wasn't super accurate. His QBR wasn't great. His passer rating wasn't great either. His average wasn't super high. He had 223 passing yards, but he did have 10 carries for 40 yards and a touchdown. And the one thing that I will say before moving on is that I just was reminded of Cam Newton. Like I looked at him, I was like, holy shit, I just got flashbacks from Cam Newton running into the end zone, doing the Superman, pull reveal or whatever from his chest. And I was just like, holy shit. Anthony Richardson reminds me of Cam Newton. And we all remember what Cam did his rookie year and what he did for the majority of his career in general was he was fantasy gold. He's one of the best quarterbacks to have in fantasy because of his rushing ability. It's not like his team was like that great or anything. He didn't even have a lot of really awesome receivers on that team. I mean, he did have the Greg Olsons. Then at one point there was the Travis Benjamin. I think he had, some good years with him, like maybe 1 or 2 years there. And then, or Kelvin Benjamin, sorry. But like, those are like it. That's it for, in terms of Cam Newton and like big targets. It was maybe Steve Smith. He had a couple years who was definitely his main target a couple of times. So for a couple of seasons, but like regardless, I'm long-winded and I'm basically saying Anthony Richardson, if you don't have him or if he's definitely not on waiver wires. If he is, go pick him up. But if you don't have him, maybe you consider trading for him. If somebody because I don't think there's a lot of people out there who just have Anthony Richardson and that's their only quarterback. That'd be pretty risky. So that person probably has another quarterback on their team, like, Justin Herbert or Joe Burrow or, somebody like that. I wouldn't go try trading away from the Joe Burrow owner right now because the Joe Burrow owner is probably panicking their shit off. But, like if Trevor Lawrence, for instance, if the Trevor Lawrence owner has Anthony Richardson as their backup, they're probably fine with keeping Trevor Lawrence. And if you offer a decent enough trade piece, they're probably cool with giving up Anthony Richardson. All I'm saying is whatever the issues were with him, we saw maybe that improved just a little bit in terms of his accuracy. That was like the biggest question mark for him. But as far as like, the fantasy relevance going forward, I like it. I like it. Deion Jackson had 13 carries for only 14 yards. How do you do this, bro? How do you do this? I mean, is that the offensive line? I don't even know. I don't know if you can blame the offensive line for that. Like, you're an NFL running back. You should definitely be able to make something happen. With 13 attempts, you should be able to get at least more. I mean, he had one long run for 7 yards, but like, my goodness, man, that's not going to get it done. So this just means that Deion Jackson probably isn't it. The leading back here will be Anthony Richardson going forward. And at least he'll get all like the most valuable looks and probably get the most yardage every single game. Similar to maybe how Justin Fields was last year or how Jalen Hurts was. And so, yeah, that's rough. Don't target any of these running backs. In fact, Jake Funk, Evan Hull. Evan Hull's for sure droppable. I know people were picking him up. Deion Jackson, probably just straight droppable. I wouldn't be surprised if this is actually his role diminishes with the addition of Zach Moss, because Zach Moss is going to get worked in. We have to remember over the next, few weeks, he's going to basically, be worked back in fully. So Deion Jackson, it might be just time to get rid of him. I know he was speculative. He was a speculative ad this week for maybe some desperation play in running back if you needed to. But now it's time to just cut bait with that guy. The receiving team, so we still don't have to really talk about any more rushing guys there, but the receiving team for the Indianapolis Colts, you were encouraged. You were super encouraged. Michael Pittman, 11 targets for 8 catches and 97 yards with the touchdown and that 139-yard bomb. We'd love to see that, right? Like, I mean, Pittman was going super low in drafts. Nobody trusted that offense at all. And, now you kind of, if you drafted Pittman on a kind of a desperation move or just because you needed to add depth, now you're stoked about it. You could probably play him somewhat reliably going forward this year. Don't really want to talk about many of the other guys here because it will just be a rotating cast of people other than Michael Pittman Jr. in terms of who's like getting all the targets or all the other targets. Josh Downs got 7 targets. Kylan Granson got 6. Neither of them are worth picking up. None of these guys are worth picking up. If anything, like I said, you're just dropping Deion Jackson. You might be trying to trade for Anthony Richardson and or Michael Pittman, and that's it. And yeah, so moving on to the next game. Buccaneers Vikings. So this game, hilarious. Probably just because the Vikings lost this game. But we saw Baker Mayfield actually look kind of sharp. His stats don't really say the whole story, but he put his team on his back. He had some pretty clutch plays down the stretch of this game that led to them winning. So, if you were doubting, like myself, the Baker Mayfield effect in Tampa Bay, then maybe this has kind of alleviated some of those doubts a little bit. That said, take it with a grain of salt because this was against the Minnesota Vikings. And they're just one of those teams that they'll choke any given day. They'll just choke. And that's exactly what we saw from them this week. They just choked this game away. I mean, Kirk Cousins threw 44 times for 344 yards. He had those two touchdowns and that one interception, and he completed 33 of those. So he threw a shit ton. they lost this game because they couldn't regulate the clock or hold on to the ball because they couldn't run the ball, right? That's why they lost this game. I think that's a very sort of overall vague blanket statement to put on why they lost this game. There were a number of other factors for sure, but it boils down to essentially they just couldn't run the ball. So if you're, and that was evidenced by them picking up Myles Gaskin. They were like, we just need more depth. Alexander Madison, maybe he can't do it. I don't know. They only gave him 11 carries though. You know, they only gave Ty Chandler, the next guy up, 3 carries. So, you know, and maybe it's because they went down early and they scored, you know, they did score 10 points in the second quarter, but then they were still down. So they were just throwing a bunch and it was successful, right? JJ had 9 catches for 150 yards on 12 targets. Didn't get a touchdown though. It's kind of funny. He might be essentially Julio Jones 2.0, where he'll get you like 300 yards in a game almost at times, with like 15 catches or some shit. Like Julio has done that. I think there was one game where he literally got like 300 yards in a game on like 15 catches, but he didn't get a touchdown because that's just not what he does. So this just might be that kind of unfolding again. Hopefully not. If you're a Justin Jefferson owner, you hope he gets touchdowns, obviously, but it would just be funny to see because he's a similar archetype, like a tall, awesome studly receiver that for whatever reason just doesn't get targeted in the red zone or just doesn't get touchdowns. It's like really funny. But we talked about Jordan Addison was super encouraging. TJ Hawkinson, 8 catches on 9 targets for only 35 yards, but still, I mean, one of those could have easily been a touchdown. And he looked solid. So you're encouraged by that. I think as far as waiver ads or drops from this team are concerned, you're holding out hope on Alexander Madison. You can't drop him yet. You drafted him to be like an RB2 at least, right? And so you can't drop him just yet, even though he was garbage for you this week. As far as who to pick up, you're probably not picking up any of the other pass catchers here. You're definitely not picking up Myles Gaskin. And maybe, and obviously Jordan Addison's definitely not on waiver wires. I don't really think there's anybody you could pick up on this squad that's not already picked up. Because there's like, I'm not picking up Ty Chandler. But again, like you're not dropping Alexander Madison. So let's move on to the Tampa Bay Bucks. Baker Mayfield, like I said, 21-34, 173 yards, not flashy, but he did pull it together towards the end and basically like win that game for his team. So Rachaad White, 17 carries, only 39 yards. Bad. Sean Tucker and Chase Edmonds both had 15 or less yards. And I don't even think Raheem Jarrett's worth mentioning. And then Baker Mayfield had 8 carries on 11 yards randomly. I don't know. That's a lot of carries for Baker Mayfield, but you know, only 11 yards, like, right? But, and those were probably all just like scrambles. I doubt a lot of those were even designed runs. That said, clearly it's Rachaad White's backfield, but this run game this rushing attack is not good. It'll be matchup dependent for sure. They probably, 17 carries is a lot. They could have even rushed it more depending on this game script. You know, Bay threw for 34 times. So I could see this number being like his median, Rachaad White's median as the season goes forward, but like you're just not encouraged like at all. It's similar to Alexander Madison. It's like just you're not gonna have fun starting this guy each and every week, you know, unless they get a touchdown for you, right? The receiving, Mike Evans looked great. 6 catches for 66 yards on 10 targets and that touchdown. Super legit, super stoked about that. My worry here was that Baker Mayfield just isn't a good quarterback. He only threw for 173 yards, right? But at least he got that touchdown in and the targets are high. So at least you know you like to see that from Mike Evans. Chris Godwin, I mean, he's super talented. He obviously gets open. He had 5 catches on 6 targets, but he's the second, you know, option in this pass attack. And historically speaking, the second option on a Baker Mayfield led passing attack is not great. So you're kind of bummed out about Chris Godwin, but stoked about Mike Evans. And they actually went like right around each other in terms of ADP. Mike Evans was, you know, the slight edge, but it was essentially a coin flip. But nope, you're not picking anybody up. really on this team, so there's nobody else really to discuss as far as waivers are concerned. As far as drops, if you had Chase Edmonds for whatever reason, get him off your team. Just cut him right now. And Cade Otton, if you had him on your team, get him the hell off your team too. But that's it. That's really it for this team, for this matchup. Next, we'll go to the Titans and the Saints. So this game was a lot lower in terms of the score than I was expecting, than I think a lot of people were expecting. I think the Vegas over-under was like 40-something. So even then, it was 41. So even then, they way underperformed. And this was in the Superdome, right? So this was in New Orleans. You expect them to win this game for sure. I did, at least. It didn't look like... New Orleans was -3. So that said, it looked a little messy. And Derek Carr threw for 33 attempts, only completed 23 of them. Did have 305 yards, though, so it's nice he broke 300. But he did throw for only one touchdown, and he also had an interception. So I think that's fine. I mean, if you started Derek Carr, he didn't really do a whole lot for you. You probably didn't start him unless you were super desperate. But I would say he's worth stashing on your bench if you need to go pick up a quarterback for whatever reason. Like if you're worried about Geno Smith like me, Derek Carr is somebody who's worth potentially targeting because his schedule's super duper easy, and we saw great things, as I'm about to talk about, from their receivers. So, well, real quick, we'll talk about the rushing. Jamal Williams had 18 attempts. We knew he was going to get volume. We knew he might be a little inefficient, but I didn't think he was going to be this bad. I think a lot of it just had to do with like Tennessee Titans are a pretty tough run D. They play pretty stout as well. Like they tighten up, no pun intended, near the red zone. Like they have a really great red zone defense, as evidenced by like there are no rushing touchdowns in this game. So I think it's just you kind of were tempering your expectations with Jamal Williams. I was a little high on him. I put him in a bunch of daily lineups, and he was obviously the sandbag in a lot of those situations for me, but his value was, his salary was low enough to where I could get away with those in some lineups and still cash, thankfully. So that was at least fortunate. The real big takeaway here is that this is not going to be a super efficient run game until they get other dudes involved. Nobody else in this backfield had more than 3 carries. It was Jamal Williams all day long, and Jamal Williams isn't really the guy who can do that, right? He's, back in Green Bay, we saw a couple moments when Aaron Jones was out. He led the backfield in volume, but he wasn't as efficient. He's more of a change of pace, not change of pace back, but he definitely is more of a complementary running back than an actual featured guy. So once Kamara comes back, it's going to be a different story. In fact, I think surprisingly, Jamal Williams' best games are going to be when Kamara comes back. I hope not, because I actually have Jamal Williams when in a situation where I have Kamara, and I want Jamal Williams to essentially be my Kamara replacement until I can start Kamara, and then I don't want to have to worry about Jamal Williams until maybe as just like an insurance guy. But I could absolutely see that being the case, because his role's just not going to disappear once Kamara comes back. And Kendre Miller is hurt. He wasn't even active this game. So, and they don't really like, they don't want to use Tony Jones Jr. I don't know why I can't say that. And Rashid Shaheed, they got him a couple carries, but he's more of like a pass catching type guy anyways. He did have that touchdown, which looked great, that long bomb, the single touchdown that Derek Carr threw. So before I move on to the pass catchers, Jamal Williams, you're standing pat with him, and that's all you can do. You're not really, I think if you have to start him again next week, do it. I think he'll have a better time next week. I think he'll be more likely to get a touchdown next week. He'll have an easier matchup. But don't freak out. Don't go dropping him, obviously. And definitely don't just like excommunicado him from your starting lineup for good because of this 1 week performance. Like, chances are you probably need him to play next week, and you probably don't have any other good options. Maybe you have a Charbonnet that you're stashing on your bench, or like somebody else who's just like a late round flyer that you picked who you were hoping would turn into something, but that's about it, you know? Well, guess what? You're going to have to play Jamal Williams. I'm really just using myself as an example because that's exactly what I have to do. So anyways, the receiving team for the New Orleans Saints, Olave led the receiving core here with 10 targets and 8 catches for 112 yards and that long 45-yard bomb, which was nice. He looked great. You're stoked. I mean, you drafted him to do this. He's doing it, especially in a tough matchup against the Titans. You love to see it. So nothing changes there. Rashid Shaheed, this is a guy, oddly enough, that in a lot of my leagues wasn't around. But he's like only owned in 30% or less of leagues right now. So go pick this guy up. He's actually going to be someone who might, I mean, he got 6 targets, which was the 3rd most on that team this week. So that's encouraging. You know, I don't know if he's going to do that every single week, but he's worth putting on your team. I don't know if you play him next week. But again, he's worth putting on your team because he got 5 catches for 89 yards in that touchdown and looked great doing it. So he's like maybe their Traquan Smith type role, who's like just their deep target, who gets those long threats, deep, you know, what the fuck am I saying? He gets those down to target. He threatens down the field, but regardless, they still have Michael Thomas around. They still have Chris Olave getting 10 targets. And Juwan Johnson had 5. So there's a lot of mouths to feed there. Michael Thomas, he's only going to get better. It looked like he really came into his own again, and he was about 60% of what we've seen him in the past, and that was awesome. And I think he's literally just going to keep getting better and better. So that also kind of maybe eats into Rashid Shaheed's value. So if you are targeting Rashid Shaheed, maybe he's not your top priority. There are other guys for sure that I would target over him, like the Nakua, like even Tutu Atwell. I would for sure target over Rashid Shaheed. But if for whatever reason there's like you have a really high priority or low priority or whatever, like you don't think you're going to get any of those other guys and you need a receiver like pronto, go ahead, get Rashid Shaheed. Moving on to, oh damn, there were 2 fumbles. Moving on to the Tennessee team. So, Ryan Tannehill. He showed you why people don't really trust any of the pass catchers on his team or him as a quarterback. He threw 34 times and only completed 16 of them. That's less than 50%. That's garbage. That's literally like 46% or whatever it is. I don't know what the math is there, but it's bad. And he was sacked 3 times for 17 yards. Okay, whatever. You know, that actually is bad, but that's not the main focus here. It's literally the 34 attempts and only 16 completions. You know, and he had 3 interceptions too. So that's why this game was so low scoring. Like, Tennessee defense, pretty solid, pretty stout. You know, we know that New Orleans struggled to run the ball in short yardage scenarios, and they basically had to settle for a bunch of field goals. Tennessee Titans, they're playing up against a robust, re-infused New Orleans Saints team that is ready to go. And actually, we were talking about this with Mr. Midnight 818 in the preseason when we watched their preseason game together. He said that last year, the biggest problem with the Saints, at least defensively, was that they couldn't turn the ball over. Well, guess what? They got 3 interceptions today. So you're already stoked that that narrative is changing very quickly. And in the first week of the season, I mean, yeah, it's Ryan Tannehill. Take it with a grain of salt or a handful of salt, whatever you want to do. You know what I like to say. But it's good to see if you're a New Orleans Saints fan, if you're a New Orleans defense owner, go get them actually if they're on the waiver wire. I've seen them on a couple waiver wires. Go pick them up. Go pick them up. They'll be solid all season long. Like I said, the Saints, I've said it so many times already, they have the easiest schedule of any team that I've actually broken down their schedule this year, and I've broken down a few. The New Orleans Saints have the easiest schedule by far, and it's not even close. So that translates to positive defense script games for them and positive, rushing game scripts for them. So that's why I'm not worried about the rushing game for them, and that's why I'm targeting their defense when I'm talking about just season-long defenses to own that are still available on waiver wires. The Tennessee rushing, Derrick Henry, man, what can we say? He's a beast. 15 carries for 63 yards. No touchdowns, though. It's unfortunate. There was one, I want to say he had one that he broke off that was actually called back. I think he got a touchdown that was literally called back because of a hold or some shit like that. So it's really unfortunate to see stuff like that happen, especially if you're a Derrick Henry owner. But Tajay Spears got 3 carries for 27 yards. Treylon Burks had 1 carry, and Ryan Tannehill had 3. So it's more of the same. Nothing to really talk about there. It's the Derrick Henry show in that backfield. Receiving here, DeAndre Hopkins had 13 targets, but he only caught 7 of them for 65 yards and 9.3 average. What can you do? You're going to start him. There's nothing else you're going to do differently here. It was nice to see Derrick Henry get 2 catches for 56 yards. Insane. He had that 146-yard long run, which was great. Sucks about Treylon Burks. I would have liked to see him get more targets, especially since Tannehill threw 34 damn times. Excuse me. But what can you do? I mean, he's working back in from an injury. I think they actually had him on a snap count as well. Or a pitch count. So, you have Treylon Burks. He's on your bench still. You're not starting him at all until you see that he's a main facet of this offense. And I need to see him at least supplant Nick Westbrook-Akine in targets. I need him to be the second leading target in this offense or else why did you draft him? You know what I mean? You might as well have drafted Westbrook-Akine, who is on the waiver right now. And I wouldn't pick him up though. He got 4 catches for 58 yards. He's not worth picking up in my mind. There are definitely other guys I'd rather scoop up, like Rashid Shaheed, for instance. But that's about it. I don't think Treylon Burks is droppable just yet, but it's getting really close to being that time for him. So we'll keep that in mind. But that's about it as far as waiver relevancy here in the Tennessee Titans and New Orleans Saints situation. So we're moving on. We're trucking along. We are getting through these games. Man, it's crazy how fast we're moving here. I definitely want to try to get through all these games, and then we'll call it a day since we're almost 2 hours in. But this game right here, this was the one game that actually made me feel a little better as a Bengals fan. I'm not trying to be that mean to all my Pittsburgh Steelers fans out there, but seeing y'all go down the way you did made watching the Bengals go down the way we did at least a little bit easier to swallow and stomach. That said, the Browns are not as good of a team as the 49ers. So, if we're talking about like, who lost to the worst team? The Browns are for sure worse, and so the Bengals lost to the worst team. Like, we can go ahead and call that what it is. The 49ers are a much better team for sure. They're actually a Super Bowl favorite, in the NFC. Maybe just behind, I'd say, only the Eagles at this point, especially, with never mind. The Jets aren't even in the NFC, so never mind. But but you see what I'm saying? The 49ers are a much better team than the Browns are. So that said, let's check out these stats. Kenny Pickett, 46 attempts. He completed 31 of those. He only had 232 yards with a 5-yard average. 2 interceptions, 1 touchdown, and he was sacked 5 times for 34 yards. That's rough. This game, just my goodness. I mean, you throw 46 times, you want to see more, at least in the yardage category, and obviously, touchdowns. But this was a tough matchup for him. I don't think you can really blame him a whole lot. The team just played poorly. Even Mike Tomlin, the coach, after the game, just took complete ownership. The first thing he said was bad was the coaching. He's like, we coached poorly today, So I'm fine with him taking ownership, and I'm fine with him saying that this is not going to be the same going forward, because if he's taking ownership, is like, this is a coach top-down kind of responsibility here, then he knows what he needs to do to get better. And the team, I think he's maybe buffered them a little bit from some of the criticism they might have gotten. Kenny Pickett's a second-year player. He probably was trying to protect his quarterback from that, kind of heat that he would have potentially gotten. Also, they're just a young team in general, trying to build back up. Even though they had a winning record last year, they're not like a great team. We don't look at them and say, oh, they're even the favorites to even be second in that division, right? Because it's a tough division, the AFC North. So it's like, what did we expect them to do? I think it's just, we know Tomlin's sort of standard of excellence. And Mike Tomlin has been a coach historically. I don't think he's ever had a single losing season as the head coach for the Steelers, which is like impressive. I want to say that like no other coach has been able to do that in their entire career. Like that's insane with one team, you know? So I would have to double check that, but I like, honestly, that I think is like true. So we're expecting maybe more from him, maybe not a loss in this type of way. It was definitely, you know, like the game was over fairly early on. It was 20-7 going into the third quarter. It was 27-7 going into the fourth quarter. So it was basically like they couldn't score at all, you know, even with Kenny Pickett throwing 46 times. So anyway, so Najee rushed only 6 times. So 46 pass attempts and only 10 rush attempts total. That's not normal, especially on a Steelers team, especially on a Mike Tomlin led team. That's not normal. So we will not see that going forward. I super duper highly, severely, extremely, whatever word you want to use here. It's going to be borderline impossible for this ratio to happen again in terms of 46 pass attempts and only 10 rushing attempts. I just don't see that happening. So be encouraged. Don't freak out about Najee Harris just yet. I know I was a guy who going into this season was like, I'm off Najee. I'm higher on Jaylen Warren because I think it's going to be a Tony Pollard, Ezekiel Elliott type situation where Jaylen Warren just ends up taking over that job, or at least being the better back to have out of that backfield for fantasy. This didn't really show me that was the case. Jaylen Warren only had 3 carries. Granted, it was a really bad rushing game again for the Steelers. They only had 10 rushing attempts total. Najee Harris is still the leader in this backfield. I think that at least is the clear, definitive takeaway here. And he did look better. I will have to say that. And, you know, a tough matchup, all that stuff, Najee looked better. So I guess I will have to take some of my words back, eat some of my own words, say like, all right, maybe it's time to go target Najee for a trade. Go out and get him. He's not going to be this bad going forward. The Steelers will get it figured out, and he will be the leader in that backfield. So if you know somebody who has Najee Harris, who's freaking out, who's like trying to hit the waiver wire for, you know, the Kyron Williams of the world or the Kenneth Gainwells of the world, because they're like, I need some running back depth because Najee is my 2nd round pick or 3rd round pick who's just not doing it for me. Go see what they can, you know, go see what you can get for Najee, or go see what you can, you know, give up for Najee. I would definitely target Najee right now. As somebody who could be like solid for you going on. And don't give up too much for Najee, but targetable in a trade for sure. Absolutely. Right now. Super, super buy low moment for him. Jaylen Warren, probably droppable. I know a lot of people who have picked him up and stashed him as maybe he could be the what I've been essentially describing as the Tony Pollard role in this backfield. If you want to hold on to him for one more week, you can afford to. Sure. Hold on to him. But I'd say similar in how I'm like kind of higher on Najee now, I'm lower on Jaylen. I think I'm going to drop him anywhere I have, at least for other guys like Kyron Williams or Tyler Algier if he's out there, right? Pittsburgh receiving. Allen Robinson had 8 targets. That's the biggest takeaway here for me. Obviously, Deontay Johnson went out with that hamstring injury. He didn't finish the game. He still had 6 targets for 3 catches and 48 yards. But the fact that Allen Robinson led this receiving team with 8 targets, I don't know if we'll see that again, especially with George Pickens only having 7 targets and only catching 5 of them for 36 yards. Like, I'm just saying, if you're going to go out and get Allen Robinson, know that this could literally have just been a week 1 like aberration, like in a positive aberration that will never happen again, right? A mirage, if you will, something that looks good that just is not what you thought it was, which is, I believe, Allen Robinson. So don't go picking him up. I'm not going to. I wouldn't blame you though if you did, And frankly, even if you do pick him up this week, I don't know if you're starting him confidently, because I just don't see 8 targets being his usual volume. But if Deontay Johnson is missing time, and we saw that he could miss 3 to 4 weeks, that is the initial, they were saying there is a chance for him to go on IR. So if that's the case, yeah, Allen Robinson is for sure an easy pickup, but again, tough to play. Easy to pick up, tough to play and rely on. But that could actually be proven wrong. Allen Robinson, let's see how old this guy is. He's only 30. So he and Ty Lock are the same age. I could see him potentially having a resurgence in his career this year. Maybe he's like motivated and driven. Who knows? Maybe it's a good fit on this team. I don't know enough about this relationship with him and Mike Tomlin, but clearly he's getting a bunch of targets. Clearly they think he's a good fit, and Kenny Pickett liked looking at him. So we'll see. So maybe go stash him up. Maybe go stash him, actually, now that I think about it. Jaylen Warren, like I said, droppable probably, but if you want to hold on until next week, that's fine. Pat Freiermuth, we'll keep an eye on his health going forward. And that's really it for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, on the other side of the ball, for the San Francisco team, San Francisco 49ers, Brock Purdy threw 29 times. He completed 19 of those for only 220 yards, but for 2 touchdowns, both to Brandon Ayuk. He looked great. And but he was sacked for only 3 times for 17 yards, and his QBR was great, and his passer rating was great too. Christian McCaffrey, oh man, he just looked so good, and he's now showing everyone out there who drafted Jamar Chase over him, who drafted maybe not Justin Jefferson, because Justin Jefferson had a great week, we saw as well. But Christian McCaffrey, man, like he was a lot of people's 1-1 going into this offseason. That shifted a little bit over the offseason during preseason. He started to slide a little bit for whatever reason. I don't know. Maybe they thought this was going to be more pass heavy offense. It's Kyle Shanahan as well. So this carry total could completely change. We might see Elijah Mitchell getting 10 carries next week and Christian McCaffrey's carry total coming down. But it wasn't even the volume that struck me. It was his efficiency. I mean, he had 6.9 average on 22 carries, dude. That 65-yard long touchdown obviously had a lot to do with it. But, he just looked so good. He looked better, I think, than he ever has been, than he's ever looked. So he's just proving everybody wrong. All the people who drafted anybody over him, didn't matter who it was. Even if it was Justin Jefferson, I think he still proved them wrong. And it's still only 1 week, but he looks great. And I am actually really sad that I wasn't able to draft him in any leagues because I just didn't have any high enough draft picks. My highest draft pick was 5, and he was already long gone, by then. And so, wasn't able to get him. But this is great for all the McCaffrey owners. You're probably super, super stoked about that. And, just kind of more of the same in the backfield here. Elijah Mitchell, probably not droppable just yet. I'd wait 1 more week, but if you have to drop him, he's definitely droppable. He's borderline droppable this week. I'd wait 1 more week. He still had 5 carries, second most in this backfield, even though he only had 10 yards. I could see that potentially, like I said, those carries getting a little more even between him and CMC. So, but again, that's very speculative. I don't have a lot to go on other than just Kyle Shanahan. That's what he likes to do. He changes it up, and you won't always see this ratio every week from this backfield. So, regardless, I think CMC is just untouchable at this point and will be nigh impossible to trade for if you're trying to get him. The receiving, though, this is what I want to talk about. Ayuk had 8 targets, 8 catches, caught all 8 of them for 129 yards and 2 touchdowns. Looked great. You're stoked. He led the week almost. I want to say it was either him or Tyreek. I think it was him and Tyreek who had the top 2 fantasy finishes this week. Tyreek, I think, had 40 points, and Ayuk had 33 or something like that in PPR scoring. So you're just stoked, right? Brandon Ayuk, how much more happy could you be with a performance? There's very little you can say other than just like liquid gold, pure fucking O2, right? Pure octane. I don't even know what I'm trying to say. You're happy about this. Deebo Samuel. I was higher on Deebo Samuel this year than I think like some other people were. He was going kind of low in terms of what we've seen as ADP in the past. And I think this isn't really what we're going to expect with him going forward. 7 targets, that's great, but only 5 catches for 55 yards. Like, it's not going to be the Brandon Ayuk show every single week. I do believe Deebo Samuel will get more involved at some point or another, going into the next week or just further into the year. I don't know if Ayuk's like necessarily, if teams are looking at him as the number 1 receiver, right? Can he carry that load? He only did this in my mind. Yeah, he's a phenomenal player. He's a great route runner. All that stuff. He got open as hell. But like, that's probably because the defense was keying in on Deebo, right? So we'll see if that dynamic shifts. But maybe you're a little worried about Deebo. I am probably going to target Deebo owners because, yeah, they're probably a little worried, right? And they're especially because they saw Ayuk eat, and they're like, why didn't Deebo get anything? Like, why didn't he at least get 1 touchdown? Is Ayuk like the main target here? Probably. But is Deebo only going to get, 5 catches for 55 yards each and every week? Probably not. So I'm going to go target Deebo, especially with, maybe George Kittle not being 100%. I know he was banged up going into this game. Still got 3 catches for 19 yards, but it wasn't like spectacular. He had 6 targets and only caught 2 of them or 3 of them. So, as far as ad drops, like I said, you could probably drop Elijah Mitchell. You're probably not going to want to drop him right away. I'd maybe wait 1 more week. I would definitely drop Jaylen Warren next week as well if something doesn't change. So the 2 people that are probably worth dropping are Elijah Mitchell and Jaylen Warren. And then folks you're trying to pick up on these teams, well, Allen Robinson, if he's available. We know what I think of him, though, so it's really just if you believe in him, go get him, but I don't really. And that's about it. There's nobody really who's worth picking up from the 49ers who already isn't grabbed and on rosters. So, yeah, moving on. Cardinals, Commanders. Jeez. We have... we might have to cover some of these games tomorrow. I didn't realize how many freaking games we had left. So we talked about the Rams, Seahawks. We didn't talk about that. We talked about Bills, Jets. I'll do this one. I'll do this one actually. Green Bay Packers, Chicago Bears, and then we'll call it a day. This game was surprising in a lot of ways. I think a lot of people going into this were expecting Chicago to win this game. Chicago had the negative 1.5 line, and the over-under was 41 points. This blew the over-under way over, and was much more high-scoring than we thought it was going to be. Maybe we thought Green Bay offense was going to struggle a little bit because they didn't have, the Christian Watson, and we thought Romeo Doubs was going to be a little hobbled. Romeo Doubs looked fine today, or this game. So that wasn't a factor. And maybe we just didn't know what Jordan Love was going to do. And it's not like he did a whole bunch. I mean, 27 attempts, 15 completions, but he threw for 3 touchdowns. And his passer rating was pretty great. So, when on the other side of the ball, you're talking about 37, Justin Fields throwing 37 times and only completing 24 of those for 216 yards and a touchdown and an interception. I mean, it's night and day there, right? Especially Justin Fields, you look at Justin Fields got sacked 4 times for 27 yards. So again, the mobile quarterback getting sacked though, right? And I think it also has to do with they're scrambling, they're trying to make a play, they're trying to get free, but they're holding on to the ball the entire time they do that. So as opposed to, somebody who's like a more of a pure pocket passer type player who just gets rid of the ball when they know that they're feeling that pressure because they're not going to scramble out of the pocket and try to make a play. They're just going to call it a loss and throw it out of bounds potentially. Well, these mobile quarterbacks like Russell Wilson back in the day are scrambling around their pocket trying to make a play happen. Well, guess what? If nobody gets open, and they're going to eat that sack. they're just going to eat it, right? Because you can't scramble forever. And if you can't, make a play down the field in terms of like you're scrambling maybe and rushing down for yardage, whatever it is, similar to how Justin Fields did 9 times for 59 yards, like you're going to take those sacks. So Justin Fields didn't really perform that well. He was actually fine for fantasy. I think he was able to get, obviously 59 yards rushing is awesome for a quarterback. But the 1 touchdown and the 1 interception, kind of bad. Obviously, he didn't perform as well as you would have liked, but it's not anything to like freak out or start trying to find other options for. You're still going to stick with Justin Fields, at least for the next couple of weeks, right? Until maybe we see that there really is time to panic. Like Josh Allen, you're not benching Josh Allen. You're going to stick with Josh Allen, even though he threw 3 picks and had a fumble last night, right? Like you're still playing Josh Allen going forward. Similarly here, you're still playing Justin Fields going forward. There's no reason to stop right now, right? The backfield in Chicago is rough-a-roni. It's literally Justin Fields, who's the lead back. And then it's who else, right? It's literally a murky swamp there. So you're worried about Khalil Herbert. I don't know who would have drafted Dante Foreman, but you're dropping Dante Foreman if you have him. Khalil Herbert, not droppable yet, but you can't start him reliably. And honestly, he's very close to being droppable. I don't know if there's any running back on this team you can even trust. But I would hold on to Khalil Herbert because it is still just week 1. And I think they don't want Justin Fields running as much as he did. And maybe, or at least scrambling and getting sacked 4 times or whatever. So how do you alleviate that? You rush the ball more, or you run the ball more with design runs with your actual running back. So Khalil Herbert could see his totals going up. But again, you're not starting him right away, or at least you're not starting him super confidently next week. Cole Kmet. What can I say? 5 catches for 44 yards on 7 targets. That's about what you expected from him. You hoped he got it into the touch. You hope he got a touchdown, but you're fine with him. You're not dropping him. Darnell Mooney, he's pick-upable. I think he's absolutely pick-upable. In fact, I played him in a DFS lineup. I was expecting him maybe to get some more yardage at least, but he did have 7 targets. He caught 4 of them and with a touchdown. So pick-upable for sure. Go pick up Darnell Mooney. He is somebody who, again, these totals will change. This was not a good game for Justin Fields. This was not a good game for the Bears. DJ Moore only had 2 targets, right? Dumb. How are you throwing 7 times to Cole Kmet and Darnell Mooney, and you're only throwing 2 times to DJ Moore? Maybe that was like Jair Alexander just blanket coveraging DJ Moore, and that's probably what we can chalk that up to. But, because Jair Alexander is one of the best cornerbacks in the league. He's like top 2 when you talk about, top 100 player list. He's the second best cornerback on the top 100 list. So he's good, and he's, his peers know he's good. So that could have just been that. DJ Moore will definitely have better success going forward. So you're not freaking out just yet about DJ Moore, but you also kind of like drafted him with a little bit of risk, knowing that, he could possibly get you these dud games if Justin Fields just doesn't take a step forward as a passer the way we'd want him to. But as far as drops, like I said, you're dropping Dante Foreman. You're not dropping Khalil Herbert yet because he did have those 3 catches for 37 yards on 5 targets. So they are passing him out of the backfield, which is nice. But you're probably not starting him super confidently, like I mentioned. And you're picking up Darnell Mooney, and that's about it. On the Green Bay side of things, I think you're picking up Jordan Love. I think Jordan Love's worth a scoop and stash at minimum, right? Because he went into Chicago, he threw 27 times, completed 15 of them for 3 touchdowns and no interceptions. He only threw for 245 yards. But still, that's solid for only having completed 15 of his passes. So, his QBR says it right there, 73.3. That's above average. I think if we're talking about a guy who they're trusting to basically they're giving him the keys to this system, right? Aaron Rodgers is a thing of the past. It's on to greener pastures, no pun intended. And Jordan Love is showing that he might be that guy. He played really well. I was impressed with his poise, with the throws that he was making. Again, not super duper accurate. He missed 12 of his attempts, but like it wasn't about the missed throws. It was about the throws that he actually completed in tight coverage to guys that, were open, yes, but still in situations where he, again, scored 3 touchdowns passing. So I'm happy with all the things that I saw from him. We're talking about the rushing now. Aaron Jones looked great. I mean, that backfield was a little wonky at first, right? We thought, okay, yeah, A.J. Dillon's going to come in, vulture some touchdowns, maybe vulture some touches from Aaron Jones. If anything, he looked the other way around. We see here, A.J. Dillon led the backfield with 13 carries. He only had 19 yards. Aaron Jones had 9 carries for 41 yards and that touchdown. He averaged 4.6 yards per carry. Even Patrick Taylor averaged more yards per carry and actually got more total yards than A.J. Dillon. Packers fans are pissed right now. Despite the win, Packers fans are looking at A.J. Dillon like, dude, what are you doing? Are you still an NFL running back? Did something happen over the offseason? Did we forget? Did we miss something here? Like, why do you look so bad? Who knows? Maybe it was a bad day. Maybe he, ate a bad enchilada the night before or something like that. I wouldn't trust Chicago enchiladas anyways, or Chicago Mexican food. Definitely don't trust Mexican food in Chicago. But I don't know where this narrative is going, this hypothetical. But at the end of the day, I would chalk it up to we're never going to see this again from A.J. Dillon. And if we do, then he's fully droppable. But I have A.J. Dillon as my RB2. I'm not dropping him yet. Even after this terrible performance, he led the backfield in touches, or at least in carries, and he still got 2 catches on 3 targets for 17 yards. So he's not not getting worked in the run game or in the pass game. And Aaron Jones, yeah, I mean, he looks like the better back because he is. But 2 catches on 86 yards and a touchdown is not always going to happen. He's not always going to rip one off for 51 yards to the house, right? So I think A.J. Dillon still has value here, but I'm tempering my expectations. And in fact, I might even be benching him for the foreseeable future. Depending on who I get in my waiver pickups this week. If I get like a Tyler Algier or a look who like I said is available in one of my leagues, surprisingly, or a Kyron Williams or somebody like that, or even maybe a Gus Edwards, because we haven't even talked about the Baltimore situation with J.K. Dobbins, or Justice Hill, who actually led that backfield this week. So those are guys that I'm all targeting. And I'm hoping to get because I would end up playing them over A.J. Dillon, but I'm not dropping A.J. Dillon just yet. That's about it from the rushing. For the receiving, I would say the big takeaway here is Romeo Doubs had 2 touchdowns on only 5 targets and 4 catches for 26 yards. So what that tells me is that just they're distributing the ball around, right? So Aaron Jones had 4 targets. Luke Musgrave had 4 targets. Jaden Reed had 5 targets. Romeo Doubs had 5 targets. And then everybody else only had 3 targets or whatever. So, in a game where where Jordan Love only threw 27 times, he spread the ball out a lot. So this kind of just means to me is anytime you have an offense where there's no one clear-cut main target, I'd much rather, especially if it's a high octane passing offense where the quarterback's distributing the ball. I'll use examples like Patrick Mahomes and Kansas City Chiefs. There's one target, it's Travis Kelce, but then it's who the fuck else do you trust there? It's really nobody, right? Maybe now it's Rashee Rice, but you're still, he's distributing the ball pretty evenly amongst the other targets. So there's not really another guy that's going to jump out on any given week that you can trust on that pass attack, right? So maybe that is Romeo Doubs. Romeo Doubs, pick him up. Straight up pick him up. We saw that if there was any issue with his hamstring, there wasn't now. Going into this game, maybe there was, but now there isn't, clearly. And they're going to monitor that going forward, or maybe they're just he's fine now. It was just a little scare. and he's clearly a major facet of this offense. Go get him. Obviously, he's not going to get 2 touchdowns every single week. But as long as Christian Watson is out, Romeo Doubs is going to have an active role in this offense. And that's actually why I was kind of high on Jaden Reed, who also had 5 targets and only got 2 of them. So Jaden Reed and Romeo Doubs both led this team in targets. But Romeo Doubs obviously caught more and had those 2 touchdowns. But that's encouraging for Jaden Reed people. If you haven't gotten him yet, go pick him up. Go pick up both Jaden Reed and Romeo Doubs until Christian Watson comes back. Or sorry, don't pick them both up, right? Don't have them both on your team, but pick one of them up, right? I would lean towards Jaden Reed just because he's younger and I believe he is more talented in the long run, for the rest of the season. But Romeo Doubs, like, he's solid, right? We saw what he did. And as long as he's healthy, he'll get worked into this offense. So those 2 guys are like a coin flip for me. Like I said, I'm targeting Jaden Reed. I actually already have Jaden Reed in a couple leagues because I just picked him up with the Christian Watson news. But now if you needed to see something from him, I think the 5 targets is encouraging. He'll catch more than just 2 catches off those. Like, this was his first game in the league, right? He's a rookie. So I like it. I like his talent. I like his upside. So I'm targeting Jordan Love. I'm targeting Jaden Reed. I'm targeting Romeo Doubs. And I'm tempering my expectations with A.J. Dillon. I'm probably benching him going forward. I'm not dropping him just yet, but that's my plan for this team. So yeah, let's. I think we can call it there. We're already 2 hours and 10 minutes in. It's 4:10. So I'm gonna go get some late lunch here, but we have to cover some of the other games maybe like later tonight if I want to jump back on. But there's like maybe this Eagles, Dolphins, Chargers, and Cowboys, and so like 3 games we can cover later tonight. Maybe we'll cover the Cardinals and the Texans Ravens game. But other than that, y'all, thanks for tuning in. It was a lot of fun. It's 4:10 p.m. on a Tuesday, September 12th. I'll see y'all later. Maybe later tonight, maybe tomorrow, but or maybe later tonight, definitely tomorrow. But keep tuning in. I really appreciate y'all watching. And yeah, we'll talk to y'all later. Take it easy, y'all. Check it. Check.